Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of HorseShow360 podcast. This is going to be a pretty cool episode. I've got Daniel Bluman joining me today. So, Daniel, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel and I go way, way, way back, way back. I mean, I think probably, how old are you?
We go back a good 22 years, I'd say.
How old are you now? How old are you? 35?
I turned 35. Yeah.
35. I'm 40. Yeah, so probably, I mean, I think I was 18, maybe even younger. Well, the first time I met you, probably I was even younger. When did
Yes.
you come to the States for the first time to do
The
this whole
first
show
time
jumping thing?
was in the year 2000, and I remember clearly meeting you in 2002. And then I remember working with you guys that you were actually training me and helping me quite a bit in 2003 and 2004, and then from there on.
Yeah, with Debbie Stevens. You probably hated my guts then.
Well, there's one time I always really liked you. There was
Yeah.
one time I actually really hated you because you were giving me a lesson and then no stirrups, and you said, "Okay, start cantering, whatever. I
Yeah.
want to be back when I'll be back soon. Just canter until I come back." And something happened to you, and you didn't come back. So I just kept on cantering and
That's
cantering,
great.
no stirrup for a while. I remember that clearly, and then you finally came back because I was not getting back into the barn. So I guess someone called you and asked you what was going on. You came back and you said, "You're still here." So of course you told me to canter until you came back, and here I am still cantering. So yeah, funny stuff like that. But
Tough love. Tough love,
tough
but
love, exactly. Yes.
yeah, we came from a similar school, right? I mean, I think I remember you the first memories I have of you, yeah, back it must have been 2000 or whatever. As I remember, you know, I honestly have so much respect for the hustle. And I remember when you were a little kid, you were here, you had a duffel bag, you were selling, I think it was shirts and
Yeah.
breeches and all sorts of stuff from stuff that you got made in South America here,
Yeah.
and you somehow convinced every single rider that you approached to buy 5 shirts at a time, and
Exactly.
you would wheel and deal and making deals. I remember it. I used to wear the shirts. They
Yes,
were amazing.
absolutely. You did. Yeah. Yeah, I used to. I grabbed a couple piqué shirts, and then went to Colombia, and in the factory started making them. I would bring them here, and like you said, I would just go on the bicycle around and offer it to everyone I could. And you did buy a few from me. I remember clearly. It was 50 for one, 80 for two.
Yeah, I think I haggled you pretty good. But that's so good because, I all we Michelle and I already teach our kids like every summer we encourage them to start a little business, figure out something to start stocking away on their in their bank accounts and teaching them that. So maybe that's something you can do for your kids when they get a little older, or even now, in the horse industry. You're at events every week all the time. I think it's so important for our kids to learn how to do that these days rather than just coast, huh?
Yeah, absolutely, Derek. And like you say, that's a bit how we were raised. I also remember from the very beginning, you were always coming up with good ideas. I remember you had this platform that was like Facebook but for writers. You were always trying to find ways to innovate, to bring good products, to bring good stuff. And unfortunately, in society, sometimes people find that when you hustle, it's good to give you shit when you fail. But I think that you and I both can agree that that's incorrect. When you're hustling and you're trying to get an idea or starting an idea or selling something, it's normal to fail. It's normal. It's actually more normal to fail than it is to succeed. But the only way to succeed is to continue trying, to come with ideas, to work on them, and to see if it clicks, and you've done that, and because of that, you've been able to come up with some great stuff and great products, with the Split Rock Jumping Tour, and the horse shows you organize, and all these kinds of events that became so important for the industry, not only in North America but actually in the world because of the quality of the events. And because of that also, we've been able on our side to get some stuff done, just not being afraid to fail.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the overall arching general rule of thumb for business. I mean, I can't imagine there's anybody in any industry that hasn't failed multiple times before that you succeed at something. And like you said, I mean, you find ways to get in and out of different things to, create a life for yourself in this industry. That's one of the beauties of this industry is that, you know, you really can reinvent yourself. You can really come up with a variety of ideas to succeed for you and your family, and that's one great thing that I think there's room for everybody in this industry because of that. And it's also finding your niche in the world in the industry. I remember you from a kid, you had this ultra drive to just be a top rider, right? That was your, I mean, I know you want to do great business and everything like that, but it stems from the competitiveness, no?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that uh, you start in the industry and you're trying to find your place. Obviously, I was really driven to try to make it all the way to the top in the sport. I really love the sport and doing it and competing. And I think that you also have to get a little bit of lucky along. You have to get some luck along the way. Like some things happen. I hit maybe the right horse at the right time, or the right couple horse at the right times, and that just sort of sets you in the direction that allows you to go get those goals. And try to achieve those high objectives that you have. But I guess that's life. You just have to a little bit be in the right place at the right time also, and to prepare yourself for when the opportunity arises, so you can actually make the best out of it.
Give everybody a little bit of background on your history and everything. I know we touched about it when you came over here in 2000, was it? But did show jumping and the sport bring you to the States so you can advance that passion, or what was the reasoning for coming to the States from Colombia, right? From South America. Give us a little bit further background on your history there.
Yeah, actually, no, it had nothing to do with horses. The reason that my family moved, my mom, my father, and my brother Steven, was because Colombia was really dangerous at the time. It was very dangerous already in the 90s, but we couldn't get out because my father was really busy with his company. So we just couldn't leave, and it continued to get worse and worse, and in the early 2000s it became unmanageable. It was just there were bombs, car bombs, kidnappings, killings. It was just a complete disaster. And we were getting a little bit older, so we obviously were wanting to do a bit more stuff, not stay home all the time. So my father made the decision to send us to America, for a few years at least, until things calm down a bit. And then he was coming back and forth to see us, like 1 week here and 3 weeks in Colombia, 1 week here, 2 weeks in Colombia. And that's actually how we ended up here. We ended up in a town called Weston, which is not far from Fort Lauderdale Airport. And we had no idea that the Winter Equestrian Festival existed. We arrived there, and we started to drive around to try to find a place where we could ride, because my brother and I rode, and we found a place there local. And then we were just so lucky that Wellington was an hour away. Like, without knowing, we ended up an hour drive from the winter capital of the world. So again, just things that happen for a reason.
Yeah. And it's crazy looking back on, when you're talking like year 2000 and everything like that, you know, um, it's crazy how the sport has really changed since then, huh? Back then you only had Wellington, Ocala, Ocala Hits, which was a very different product than what they were offering in Wellington and everything like that. And you really had to go to Wellington to aspire to be anything and everything in this sport, at least in the high performance, right? And now there seem to be so many events, so many different venues, so many different options going around. Like, how do you juggle and choose between all these different venues? How do you keep your horses sane enough maybe that's part of it is taking them to compete at other venues and stuff like that. Does How much of that strategy goes into your yearly planning, and especially your winter when you're, because you live in Wellington, right? Wellington in New York, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We have a home and a facility in Wellington and another one in North Salem, New York. And you know what, Derek, I think that that's a very difficult aspect of what the sport has become, because you have so many options and so many competitions, and you obviously want to be able to be successful, and obviously there's a lot of prize money, so you want to be able to take some of it home for you and for your team. So you just have to be, at the end of the day, you have to be mindful of the fact that you're working with horses, and you have to really keep your priorities very clear, and make the best plan that works for you, not only for the horse aspect, but also for the family aspect. Like you, Derek, I always wanted to have a family. I now have a family with my wife, Ariel. We have two kids, a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old. And for us to be able to be together, to spend quality time, for the kids to grow up with a father is extremely important. So, I would say that my number one priority right now is to be able to pick events where I don't have to spend so many nights away from home. I want to be able to be at home as much as possible, to spend time with the children, and obviously with my wife, to be able to enjoy our home, because for me, home is not just a house. It's the actual home. It's just something that really fills my heart. And then well, you're a horse show organizer and you do some of the best horse shows in the country. I think it's important to support those horse shows. So I am very much for supporting events that want us to be there, that are trying to do the best for the sport, and for the riders and for the horses. So I definitely don't miss those events. I will make sure they're in my calendar. And other than that, I just try to feel the weeks with events that seem to fit the horses, and that are going to be a nice pleasurable experience. And depending on the horses that you have at every given moment, you have different options, which I don't think is bad. I think it's a positive thing. And like you and I have spoke before, I think that the sport continues to develop, and if you stay with your mind open, and you can have some vision, and I think both you and I have that. Thank God we have vision. We're able to make smart decisions and continue to come up with ideas that better uh, put us in place for the evolution of the sport. That allows us to be in the game in the most important moments and places of the sport. So I think we just have to stay aware of that, and continue looking for the options, and accept the change, and actually accept the change, and be encouraged by the change.
Yeah, you're literally going through, like, touching a little bit on every one of my questions I had lined up for you. I definitely want to get to the family aspect of it, because I think it'll be so interesting and nice for people to hear sort of how it's done. But let's talk a little bit more how it's done, like in a high performance aspect, and how a top rider can juggle those kind of things. But let's talk about the events, because I mean, I know recently the I don't know. This is a tough one, because I've made a business out of creating new events. And when I look at all of my favorite events, worldwide, or here on this continent, or anything like that, when I think of the best events in the world, I kind of have to agree with like Steve Gerdad and Martin Fuchs recently, who really only want to support like real traditional events that are um known in the history books of our sport and everything like that. When I think of events like that, I think of the best events in the world, and it's hard for me to think of really almost any new events that have come up recently that can compare to the feeling that those events create. And I know a lot of new events are trying. I mean, when you look at thermal now, you look at WEC Ocala, you look um, at all these new venues popping up, and everybody trying to enter the industry and have major events. Which events do you remember most? And I'm a little bit torn, to be honest. if you were to come to me in the first year, 5 years maybe of me creating events, I would have said that we have to modernize it. New, new, new. We have to go. We have to go. And now I'm a little bit the opposite. I find myself sort of like deleting some new events that just aren't doing good enough or aren't cool enough. And I find myself like searching, searching, searching to create another traditional type event. I when I think of Aachen, I think of Dublin, I think of maybe Spruce Meadows. I think of really the only one, at least that I'm a part of, that could be in that same kind of realm of traditional, unbelievable natural atmosphere is the one in Kentucky in April. That I think that's super memorable because the fan base, the crowd, everything. You've done it pretty much every year since the inception. You've won it, right? Did you win it last year? No,
2 years ago.
you were like
Yeah.
2 years ago, right? So for me, like I'm torn. Like, what do you think about that? Like, you have all these events. I mean, I'm sure you've traveled up to WEC to compete in those. That's a brand new, for all intents and purposes, it feels like a brand new venue. They haven't been doing FEI for many years. Of course, they're amazing events, but I don't know. I get a different feeling of the other traditional events, and I feel like the history of our sport, deserves to be a little recognized. How do you feel, and how do you align in a mindset wise compared to like Steve Yerdad and Martin, who are fighting pretty hard against, that new modern grain?
Yeah, well, I think for sure you have to put into the priorities or the most important events to aim for the traditional events, because those events have been around for a long time. They are in places that are really support the sport, with great atmosphere, with incredible facilities, with a horse show organizer, with organizers that understand the sport, and with a public that understands the sport. And I think that this is very important. Traditional places really are traditional because of those things. They have a horse show, an organizer, and a team of people behind the event that understand the sport, and a crowd that understands and values good sport. And that already makes a huge difference. And on top of it, these traditional venues and traditional organizers are able to keep up with the sport and come up with a good prize money, and keep the facilities being top of the line, like as good as any. Then it is our responsibility as riders to support and give the importance to those events. So yes, I agree with you. Number one are those events. At the same time, there's some traditional events that have not been able to modernize, that have not been able to come up with new ideas, and with the right thinking to be able to take the venue and the event itself to the new level, to where
Yeah,
those other successful traditional events have gone. So then it's at that point that you have to recognize that maybe yes, it's a traditional event, but it's not so good. It's not that good. So those traditional events are going to fade out. They're going to fade away. They're not going to be part of the important ones that us riders are going to be looking into. And you're going to be opening room for new events that are excellent. For example, last year you did one in Santa Anita. That's a brand new event. This didn't exist before in the calendar, and it turned out to be an incredible experience. Why not that horse show can become one of the best, if the conditions are there and the place is there, the infrastructure is there, the riders want to support it, the sponsors want to support it, there's good crowd, there's good atmosphere, then you have a super event that maybe right now is not considered traditional because it's brand new, but 20 or 30 years
sure,
from
sure.
now it will be considered a new traditional event because it's going to have the
It's definitely,
features.
I agree with you. It's definitely a feeling, like those traditional events. Like, I've never competed at Dublin. I've never competed at Aachen, or anything like that myself back when I was riding. But when I go to those events, just to feel it, experience it, get knowledge on how to produce events over here and take a little bit here and there, it definitely, you hit such a good point that it's literally the level of, um, maybe education is not the word, but knowledge behind the fan base there that creates that traditional feeling, that creates that traditional atmosphere, the chanting, the cheering, the stomping, the all the different things that go into making top athletes and everybody involved feel a certain way. I think that that's why obviously the five stars in Wellington are amazing. You know, that fan base, you know, as well. You know, those are mostly exhibitors and everything like that. You know, for me in our sport, um, you know, anytime you have um everybody always wants to like engage new people into our sport. And I mean, I understand why. And I've had lots of podcast episodes where I've touched on this, where we have to touch new people, we have to grab new people, we have to bring new people in, like Formula One and all these other sports. But my mindset has always been speaking to the people that we already have, you know, and that kind of relates exactly to what you're saying. The events that do that, that speak to the people that we already have engaged in our sport or in horse sport in general, um, you look at those events, and those are the biggest events in the world. That fan base is knowledgeable. That fan base, you know, religiously comes to those events every year, and those fans are what create those sort of traditional atmospheres. And to touch on Santa Anita, I mean, I think even though that was a brand new event, you know, they're still ingrained in horse sport. You can't forget, you know. So they are passionate about racing, but they're also passionate about equestrian.
Yeah.
Nikki and the family there that are behind first racing and everything are ingrained in show jumping. So all those details, and then you have the thoroughbred heritage at Santa Anita Racetrack and all the tradition behind that venue. I think it's sort of like a perfect storm, and that's where that idea to host events at that venue and in partnership with them, it came to light to create, like you're saying, a traditional type event that can stand the test of time. And I think that that's really the kicker that makes an event really special. The problem is that I see sort of in America anyway, in Canada and stuff, these monster venues coming that run consecutive events like for 3 or 4 months straight. And I think it's a hard line to juggle to do what you're saying, like support special traditional events that give you that extra feeling and put our sport in the best light possible, and then spending a lot of time with your family and being in one place for an extended period of time. Because um, I can tell you that's probably why I changed my life from going from being a competitive show jumper to organizing events and having a little bit more flexibility in my schedule and everything like that, was because of the family side of it. And um, we're in a tough spot, I think, in North America anyway, because you could just stay in one place all the time and compete and get world ranking points and earn money and do all these things. But I don't think that that's what our sport was founded on, you know? Like, I'm worried that special, unique, individual events, you know, like the Kentuckys, like the Santa Anitas, like even the Uppervilles, and you know these other type of events, traditional events in America. I know Devon still stood the test of time too. You know, a lot of them are failing. You know, and why are they failing? Are they failing because riders like yourself can't make it to all of them because you're stuck, you know, with that family dynamic and everything like that, trying to juggle both? Or do you think that those events are failing because they're not doing something that's good enough?
Yeah, I think that, you know, definitely the ones that are failing are because they're not doing good enough. You know, is my honest opinion. I think that even with the family and wanting obviously to be in one place and stuff like that, we're always happy to anyways pack our bags and go to a great event. You know, a great event is unique, and more so when you, like you said, you understand that when you go to these horse shows that are like week after week after week after week. Yeah, I mean, they're useful, they're good for us to have these type of events because they serve a purpose.
Yeah.
They do serve a purpose, but the fact of the matter is that this is not the sport that is really going to bring the best out of you. You know, these traditional events in these traditional places that, like you say, are events that happen once a year. are the ones that really bring the best of you, and where you want to bring your best horse and your best game. The Wellingtons, and the Ocalas, and like this, even Kentucky has, or Socrates, or and so on and so forth. Michigan, there's many of them. All of these facilities that now host many, many shows are serving a purpose. Like they have a lot of events, so you can take different horses that you need to develop. You can go with your family, stay a few weeks. All of these things are positive, but the truth is that even these places, these venues like Ocala, Wellington, Michigan, Kentucky, are having to understand that they're going to have to pick 1 week of the year and do something different. And you know it because you do it. You organize a lot of events in Kentucky that are very successful and are super needed. It's a product that we need. But you have 1 week that is the week. That's the
Mhm.
week where you're going to have the best of the country and many of the best riders in the world. You're going to have a crowd that is unique. You're going to have an atmosphere that is unique. And you're going to have a winner that is unique,
Mhm.
because that week is super important. It's traditional. So I think it's going to be important for the show organizers to recognize, that this is what we have. This is the world now. So yes, have these venues where you host many events, but allow your public to know, allow your team to know that there is 1 week that is different, and that's
Mhm.
the week where everyone has to bring their A game, because the riders will bring their A game. And that's the week where the crowd has to show up and support the event.
Yep.
I think if we all work together, show organizers, riders, and the crowd, we make those weeks unique, and they will stand the test of time for decades and decades, because those are just different weeks, and you know it, I know it, and the crowd knows it. It's just a different game. It's different show jumping.
Yeah. So, I mean, in general, your answer is you prefer more traditional type events to. It's a pretty general question, but modern events. I mean, I worry that modern events can't sustain the flash of that kind of thing. And that's why like I've had to like mentally reassess a little bit and say, you know, which venues, which areas, which crowds, which locations, which towns, which cities can support something that can do exactly what you're saying. And that's sort of where I've turned my attention to organizing events, because in the beginning I was just like, let's just do cool events wherever I could do it in a parking lot. Let's just do it. And now I'm like, I don't think that lasts long enough in people's minds. It has to be an event that is memorable in order to not necessarily it's not really to leave a legacy for me and my organizing group, but like it's more for the sport. Like how do you achieve creating events like the Aucklands, like the Dublins, like these kind of events that just they're never gonna not be cool
Yeah.
because of it.
And you know what, Derek? I think that the moment that you understand that is the moment that you can also speak to the towns and to the states and to the countries, cities, whatever, and have their support. Because the truth is that events like this are important for the state, are important at state level. The amount of
Mhm.
people that come, the attention on the state, the attention on the city, on the local businesses, on everything else. So the state should also be involved. You talk about Aachen, you talk about Dublin, you talk about Geneva, you speak about these great events, even the Masters in Calgary. There's huge amount of money coming from local businesses, and also the state. The government
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
giving money, to be able to support these events, because at the end of the day, you and I both know that holding these amazing events costs money. This is expensive. The marketing is expensive. The putting up the show is expensive. The prize money is expensive. Accommodating the riders and giving what the riders want out of a top event is expensive. So there needs to be a big investment. And in order to get this investment, you need everyone that is benefiting from the event to give back to the event. So I think that at the end, with those events that are great, if they're doing all of these things together, they're going to be able to continue to be great events past your time and past my time, because
Sure.
they have just all the ingredients of what it takes to be a great event.
Why do you think yeah, I think location really just plays such a monster factor in these kind of variables, because when you're talking about city and state and stuff like that, like, we decided to do, World Cup finals in Texas next year, which, it's always been my goal to organize a championship because we just want to keep raising our game and everything like that. And I picked Fort Worth honestly because of the culture, you know, because of the culture. Texas, the city of Fort Worth, and everything like that is so ag oriented. Their wavelength is obviously more geared towards cutting and reining and western and all of those disciplines, but it doesn't matter. If their brains are wired to be ag oriented, they're going to support it. And it's the same thing in Kentucky. It's the same thing in a lot of events in Europe. They're just wired differently to enjoy horse sport as a spectator base. LA, we went to LA because it's a racetrack. It already has 2,000 horses on it that people are already there, accustomed to viewing a little bit of equestrian sport. Wellington succeeds because they have such a monster base of everybody goes there for the winner, either there or Ocala, right? And I think that that's probably one of the reasons why WEC has succeeded recently. Obviously, they've put uncomparable investment into the venue, into their events and everything like that. But also, the town of Ocala it's a horse community. You know what I mean? So when you look at all these different areas, when you're considering what's the best events and what's the most traditional type events, that succeed, um, the communities are already built to help it succeed in that way. And if you try to do it in a random location, that I've failed in a number of locations where I thought it would work because you don't have that local support, and it's exactly what you're talking about. And it's really tough. And I've gotten to the point where actually, I've said this and people have like laughed at me like crazy because like I realize I'm part of the problem. Like I only started organizing events 10, 11 years ago. Still considered pretty young, obviously, in this industry. Um, and probably have been considered disruptive in our industry when it comes to events and making changes to how I think things should be and shouldn't be in our world. But I think we got too many events. I think we got too many events, and I think certain events need to be focused more. Like I think we need to focus. We're talking high performance here, right? We're not talking the grassroots type of thing. Obviously you're a top top rider in the world consistently, so that's sort of the direction of this conversation a little bit more. But when I think of like high performance events, like when I look at other sports and why they succeed, or racing, or I mean race cars, or tennis, golf, these other sports, you don't have like multiple feature events on a single week. I think it like dilutes it, right? Like our sport, like there should be like one, maybe two 5 stars in the world on a given week, not four or five. Like I don't know. I think it's heading the wrong direction.
Yeah, it seems like it's difficult to control, but like you said, I think that now the term 5 star just by itself doesn't really mean that much. You know what I'm saying? Like it's lost the significance that it used to have.
Mhm.
Uh, Now it's really what comes with it. Like yeah, there are some 5 stars that they're 5 stars because they give the prize money, but they don't really feel like a
Yeah.
5 star event. And then you have some 3 stars or 4 stars that actually don't have the money of a 5 star, but they feel like an amazing event, and they actually mean something. Um, and I
How do we
think that
control that though? How do we? I mean, whose fault is that? Do you think it's FEI's fault? Do you think it?
The
Like
only
I don't.
the only ones that can really control it at the end of the day is the FEI, right? They're the ones that assign it. But I think that riders now are also understanding, or at least the internal conversation amongst the riders is that okay, call it 5 star, call it whatever you want, but these are the ones that are important to win, and the other ones are just horse
Mm.
shows, events with some prize money, and that's cool, but they're not the ones that really determine your career, or
Yeah.
give you a different status. You know what I'm saying?
I
So
don't blame FEI for trying it the way they have, anytime you have interested parties to contribute, like you said, a mass amount of money into the sport and inject it into the sport, whether it be here on a different or in different continents, like you'd be silly to not try it, right? You'd be silly to not say, okay, let's see what this does to the sport. But I think we have to in the coming years figure out a way to pivot and account for it and make it a bigger feature and focus. I mean, like when you look at like ATP tennis or PGA Tour and golf, you look at all these major sports that have the best of the best competing against each other week in and week out. Well, I think of that as high performance. Like if you and McLean and Kent and Martin and Steve and Henrik and these top 20, top 25, top 50 riders in the world are competing against each other just week in, week out throughout the entire year, regardless of where you are globally. I mean, I think that would bring new people into the sport, like on a spectator side. If it's diluted and you're like, I'm not downplaying it. You know how hard it is to be a top rider in the world. But if you're competing against, you know, two, three, four top riders in the world, and the rest are way down in the rankings and everything like that, like if you're a fan of any sports, you're like, oh, cool, I get to see those guys. But then the rest, I'm not saying it's boring. I'm just being realistic when it comes to sport. If you were watching the top 50 riders in the world week in and week out, like think about how, I mean, I never miss a top 10 final in
Yeah.
Geneva. I never miss watching it. Like to me, that is the freaking coolest thing to watch all year long. But why? Because the top 10 are dueling it out,
Yeah.
and I don't know. That's just my perspective. If, to say where are we going, and I have the pleasure of organizing events, so I get to see it on a little bit of a different side. And I wish we had more of that. I wish there was like one a week. Like, how cool would it be to have one show a week that you knew was the feature and that you're working your way into the top 20, top 50, whatever it may be to get into that event. And you knew that was going to be globally broadcasted everywhere, just like every other sport. I mean, I think it would have a bigger chance to grow. No?
Yeah, I think so. Anyways, I think that one a week already would be too much. Like I think that there has to be a group of events.
Like a
I,
season.
exactly. I think that there should be like a group of events a year that just mean a lot, and that are important for the riders. I think that is going to be important to make sure that the branding is the right branding, for those events, to
Mhm.
give it the importance that it deserves. Um, I mean, for example, look what the Grand Slams became. Like the Grand Slams, in a way, became not a 5-star anymore. It's a Grand Slam. So I think that was smart. And they advertised it correctly. And for the riders, it became important because it's a Grand Slam, right? So that already puts it in the calendar, like you say, the top 10. I think that, for example, in Kentucky, we have that opportunity. It's the most important week. Is the highest attended horse show in America. You know,
Yeah,
so
I think it should be a Grand Slam event. I've
so
always said it.
so it has the
You know,
ingredients to be one of the best events in the world. Obviously because of the season and where the riders are, it's always difficult to put all the riders together, and it's even difficult in Aken, and it's even difficult in for Calgary for the Masters. It's getting harder and harder because of the geography of where the riders are, right? But I think that when you have an event of that caliber, if you continue to grow it and to be able to have the prize money, and you will attract some of the best riders in the world. And if you have some of the best riders in the world, even if you have 10 or 15 of the top 30, and then you have the rest of the field being in the top 70 or top 75, you're going to have a very, very strong, powerful competition. You're going to have great horses, and you're going to have great sport. So again, it comes to being able to trying to put these events and advertising them properly, and even as an organizer, try to have those riders that you want to have. Like I think that there are riders that that bring up more from the crowd, that bring up more from the fans than others, and not necessarily ranked the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but among the best riders in the world, in the top 30, you have 15 of the 30 that are going to drive a great competition. Their personalities, the horses they ride, the way they compete, the way they interact, so if you're able to have a good majority of those in your event, you're going to have some
Yeah.
spectacle. It's going to be fun. So,
Don't
you
you
know,
think a Kentucky event could be a Grand Slam caliber event in the future?
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I mean, I think it could. Now that it's a 5 star, obviously has to be proven, and everything like that is a 5 star in that level. But I think, I mean, maybe
there's
not
not
Grand
much.
Slam. It could be some other type of equivalent. But I
There's
just
not
think,
so much that needs to be proven. The event is proven itself already.
yeah.
Even when it was a 3 star or a 4 star, the event is incredible. And
Yet
the
it's still hard
VIPs.
to raise money for.
Yeah, but
It's tough.
that is the tough part. I think that at the end of the day, it's going to be super important for the town, for the state, to get involved and come in and give some money. Like they should be able to give a substantial amount of money for the event. And once you do that, naturally you're going to be able to have more riders, and a bigger event, which would come with more private funding and more corporate sponsorship. But again, and that's what determines the traditionals to be able to be amongst the best. Some traditional events were just not being able to get that money together, and for that they were not able to continue to grow. I mean, it took Dublin a second, but Dublin now, raised a bunch of money, has a huge
Mhm,
amount
mhm.
of money in the Grand Prix. Their field is amazing, the jobs are amazing. They have everything, but it took work, and it took many years for them to be able to get to that point. I think that definitely in Kentucky for that week of horse sport, because you also have the 3 day eventing, you have the perfect platform to have an unbelievable event. But the town has to step up, because I think they need to show the initiative, so that then the corporate sponsors also jump in, and then you end up with massive amount of money, with an incredible venue that you already have, with an incredible crowd that you already have, with an incredible group of organizers which you already have. So pretty much you're really not missing that much in order to be there. And if you end up having North America's best riders there, North American based best riders, because in North America you already have a lot of Europeans and
Yeah.
other nationalities you're going to have an incredible competition. Incredible. If everyone that it calls America their home shows up for your week in Kentucky. This would be one of the best events in the world. It would be the best event in the world that week, without a doubt. So that's how it begins, and then the rest, just edition
Mm.
after edition, it continues to grow. It's more recognized by more writers that want to be part of it and want to live that experience. And then you end up having, an event that is in the books. People want to win it.
Yeah. Where do you see our sport going in the next like 5, 10, 15, 20 years? I to be honest, I'm a little worried about it. I'm worried about, the welfare side of it. I'm worried about all those different variables. Like, I definitely have an insecurity about, the longevity in it if we don't get a handle of it. No,
Yeah, well, I'm an optimistic type of guy, so I want to believe
you
that
are or you aren't.
I am an
Okay.
optimistic type of guy, but I agree with you. I am worried. I'm optimistic, but I'm worried. I think that we have to be very careful in the decisions that we make. I think that we have to be careful with where we're taking the sport. I think that horsemanship must continue to be essential and one of the most important parts with every horse enthusiast. We cannot forget about how important it is just to enjoy the company of a horse and the taking care of a horse and spending time with a horse, and how important it is, to treat the people around the horses with respect, from the grooms, farriers, vets. We need to make sure that we love ourselves from within. We need to appreciate what we have, this life around horses. If we're able to do that, we're going to be able to make smart decisions that are going to allow our sport to continue and continue to evolve and continue to grow, or continue to even to be able to survive, because the worry now comes even to survival. Are we even going to survive 50,
Yeah.
40 years? But if we do that and we really focus on those basics, I think we are going to be okay. If we don't, and everyone is crazy about, the next Instagram story, or what am I going to share in social media with me on a horse and a ribbon and what I won and what I didn't win, and, the glamour and everything, we're going to disappear. It's
Do you
not
think
sustainable.
that's putting our sport in a negative light, that it's just, you know, promoted out there so much more, and it's so much more visible than it could have been in the past?
Yeah,
You touched on the social media side.
I think it's super positive, that those platforms exist to show our sport. But what are we trying to show? Like really, what's important when it comes to our sport? The important
Mhm.
part about our sport is the reason that you and I began riding, Derek. We began riding because we love horses, because we enjoyed being with horses, because we like working with horses. And that's the same reason why you do what you do and I do what I do, because we love horses. So if
Yep.
that's what you want to show in broadcast in social media, that is great. But if what you want to broadcast is glamour and the live, which, hey, it's fun and it's okay. It's nice that it comes with it. But at the end of the day, we cannot forget the roots of what we're doing. Horses are so important for us. They're not just a motorcycle or a bicycle that you use and then you toss on the side. No, it's the life with these horses that really is the gift for what we do. And that's what I try to
Yeah.
explain to people. And that's the healthy way of doing it. If you're doing it for any other reason than for that, you're doing it for unhealthy reasons, and unhealthy reasons come with bad consequences. So that's what I always try to tell the people. Why are you doing the sport? Are you doing it because you only want to win and you want to go to these beautiful cities and drive nice cars and go to nice
Mhm.
restaurants, and or are you actually doing it because it's fun to wake up and work with the horse and work with the people around the horse and take your horses outside and learn from them, and become a better person next to the horses, raise your family next to animals and nature, because right now people are so disconnected from the world, from the world as it is, from earth, from nature, that having the possibility of working with horses reconnects you with nature and puts
Yeah,
your brain in
such
a
a
healthy
great point.
space.
Such a great point, because I I never really thought of it that way, but what a great point, because you have a lot of these of I connect everything to events, because events are sort of like that. They're the show. They're the platform for the rest of the world to kind of see what we do, right? And comparing the certain events that are like extremely high society, that our support is sometimes given that connotation for, and the other ones are speaking to more of that traditional fan base love of the equine athletes and the riders and everything, and everybody cheering on what it took for these people and these horses to get to this level and spectate it. And there's a big difference, right? Like there's some major events globally that are only speaking to this high society sort of lifestyle, and I don't know that it puts our sport in the best life possible. Yeah, I know.
Those events are never going to be the great events because of
It's a
that.
great point. Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, because for me, that's the most important thing, because it's one thing that I've actually always struggled to do with my events is raise enough money or generate enough funds in order to cater to that sort of portion of the lifestyle that people really, some a lot of people in our sport are looking for. But the way you describe it, um, it's really not necessary for the best events in the world for people to get that feeling out of it. And I love that. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
we want to try to make sure that the people that are being inspired for what we do are the people that have a horse in their backyard, or get to go and pet their horse in the morning and then ride it after school and have fun with the friends. That's the people that I want to inspire. That's my target audience. If you ask me, I want the people that own a horse of whatever level, of whatever kind, of whatever breed, to be inspired by how much I love and I love to work with my horses and try to be the best that I can be with them, and the horses be for me, to be
mhm.
inspired and go and do the same thing. Is the
Sure.
roots of the sport that matter. Then everything from those group of people to the people that are in my level is going to fill the gap, naturally. But if we're aiming to put events or to inspire people that only have the resources to do the sport the way we do it, we're going to fail. We're going to fail miserably. We need to attract the people that love a horse. If you love a horse, watch show jumping. This is fun. If
Yep.
you own a horse, whatever, in your backyard, and you ride sometimes, but you enjoy being around horses, watch show jumping because it's fun. If you take lessons in the local school and do pony lessons once a month, watch show jumping because it's fun. Then
Mhm.
obviously the people that own horses, that jump horses, that show horses, whatever, they are going to end up loving show jumping too, if we are able to make the people that
Yep.
just love a horse and ride a horse from time to time to enjoy watching our sport, then we succeeded.
Yep. And that's those premium uber luxury events. They don't necessarily put the sport in the best light possible. I mean, you're going for the experience and the location, maybe on the water or this or that, but you're not
those
necessarily
those
doing it.
pop-up event those pop-up events, next to the ocean, or next to in the middle of a big city, stuff like, yeah, look, it's a cool product if you want to have one like that a year and attract some VIPs. But that's not a sport. That those are
Mhm.
not our roots. Our roots is horses. Our roots is places where horses are
Mhm.
happy, where there is space, and where horse people can come and watch. If you have a limited availability of tickets, and that limited availability is going to be for the people that can afford a VIP table, then you're not offering a product for everyone, and then it doesn't make
Mhm.
sense. You need to have events that incorporate everything. You want to have the glamour, the VIP, the great stuff and the party, and you know how to do that. But you also have to have the rest of the space for the normal people that want to come with their family to enjoy the horse show, and
Mhm.
have a place where they can buy popcorn and a diet coke and a beer and enjoy the competition at a reasonable
Mhm.
number. And you have to
Yep.
be able to give a product to those people and to the VIPs both, and then you have a great event. That's
Yep.
what makes an event.
Yeah, that's awesome, and some great angles too that I think I didn't even think about, and I think about this all the time. Couple other little questions for you. I want to go back to the family aspect of it because I think you and I are quite aligned in prioritizing, our family time, our making sure our kids are our absolute priority. But obviously, we're in an industry that takes a lot of sacrifice. The hours are not normal. We don't get to wake up normal 9 to 5. We live and breathe it because I think of that base of loving the horses and the industry and everything like that. But how have you juggled so people out there listening can really understand what it takes to juggle having the family life, making it worth work, giving your wife, giving your kids, giving your entire family enough attention, and at the same time knowing that you are striving to be the best at something and at the very top of the sport. And how do you juggle those pressures and figuring out how to do it? Do you sometimes find yourself sacrificing, uh or does your family just understand and know that there are weeks where dad's not going to be there, and that's what we've committed to?
Yeah, I would like to think that if I'm sacrificing anything at all, would probably be a high level sport to a degree, or being able to
Think you
be.
do that now already?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. 100%. Like, there's many horse show weeks where I even miss the first or first 2 days of competition because I don't want to be away from the kids and from my family for so long. So I get there late, which means that I don't get to do a small class before I do the qualifier to a Grand Prix. And obviously that is me taking chances that are not for my benefit. They're not improving my chances. They're actually making my chances worse. But it's a decision that I have made. And there's many events that I actually quite like, especially in Europe, that I don't do anymore. for the time being, because it would take me away from my family for too long.
Hmm.
So I've made, if anything, I've made those sacrifices, if you want to call it sacrifices, but for me they're not sacrifices. I think that you have to have your priorities straight. I work with horses every single day. Every single day, I don't take days off.
Yeah.
I ride Monday through Sunday every single week. I think that that is very important and healthy for myself to do, to wake up and work with the horses. I think that at this point our kids and my wife understand how important this is for me and how healthy it is for me also. I think that nowadays you look at people and they're always, on their phone and, on social media, or, on the computer or in the TV. And, it's hard for them to stay on the moment, to stay on the present and connect, with oneself and with nature. And horses do that. So I share that with my kids and my wife. Both my kids ride, and my wife also rides. I don't. My wife is an amateur, and my kids, I don't expect them or want them to be professional. They should be whatever they want to be in life. But at least they're being able to enjoy getting on a horse and being outside and riding a bit and going on trail rides with dad and mom, and being able
Hmm.
to clean the horse and wash the horse, and be present on the time with nature. Get dirty, when it's raining, get wet. Like, clean the stalls, get used to bad smells, feed the horses. Understand that if you don't go in the morning to feed the
Hmm.
horses, to work with the horses, then nobody takes care of the horses, and the horses are not going to be happy. All of those things are super healthy, and I didn't give those away. Yes, did I
Hmm.
have to maybe compete less in certain places? Sure. um, and that's maybe a sacrifice for the time being. The kids will grow up, and at some point they're probably not going to need me to be with them so much. They're not going to want me to be with them so much, and then maybe I spend more time in Europe again, and compete in those events. For the time being, I'm very careful about the weeks I pick. As I said, I will jump the traditional shows like you and I discussed earlier. I'm not going to miss the best weeks of sport in show jumping when I have an opportunity to compete and win. So I would make the trip to Europe and spend there the week or whatever, even if some of those weeks is away from my kids. In some cases, a couple times a year, I have to go to Europe and stay for 10 days. So that means that it's 10 days that probably I won't be with them. And that's okay. It's a compromise that we made. They understand that that only happens twice a year. Another very fun rule that we have at home is that dad never leaves more than 3 nights. And if he leaves more than 3 nights, the kids come with dad. So we really stick to it, other than the 2 times that I go to Europe during school year where they cannot come with
Sure.
me. And yeah, I mean, I accept that it's hard. You obviously you know me since I was little. I'm a competitor. I want to win. I want to be the best that I can be, and to I've always left everything in the ring. And the moment that you have a family, then things change. Things change. Then now
Totally.
now now the ring is not the most important part. Now the horses can be extremely important, but again, they're not the most important part. Families. So for me at this point is to keep a balance and to make sure that I get the best that horses can give me, for the benefit of the family and myself. And then the sport as a sport and as a competition has to be balanced, so that I don't sacrifice at any point the quality of time and the
Yeah.
opportunity that I have to be with my kids in these years that are so important for them to have that around.
They're so, when I think about it, I mean, there really probably are so few top riders in the world that really juggle both really well, right? That's what I mean by sacrifice. Like, if you want to be number one in the world, you have to make complete sacrifice and do it week in and week out, and probably not do what you're describing, and
Yeah.
make your family a priority. I mean, obviously McLean is another one that probably juggles that as best as possible, but still complicated. I would say he, off the top of my head, you might know better than me, but he probably travels a little bit more than you do in that regard. And his family makes such sacrifice, and it's really difficult. And you said, I love that your family has rules behind how many days you're away, and if you're away, then you guys plan together to join each other, and that on the road. I think that's so critical. We're very similar in our household. We roll together, and I said we had a whole episode for it about the family dynamic, and we've just decided that that's how we work better. Whether I'm traveling to events, I have most of my events in Kentucky now, literally for this reason, so we can be more home with the family the kids don't get their daily way of life too disturbed. We live on a farm still. We have the farm life like you described, everything like that. And I think that that's really important for everybody to feel to hear is to, figure out the dynamic that works best for you without trying to sacrifice really anything. And like I said, we roll together. It doesn't matter where it is. Michelle and I will pull the kids out of school. Like, we know that they're always going to get a great education and everything like that. And we just want to make sure that we're, a tight family unit that, the industry doesn't pull us away from those priorities. And that's so important. And I think people will be really interested to hear coming from you because you've made competing at such a high level such a priority, and that's really complicated to juggle. And I know there's so many people out there that are striving to do the same that could probably get really really great insight from you. Couple of quick questions before we close up here. Recently I've been following all these interviews with Harry Charles about, changing, part of the courses. And I don't know if it was necessarily attack on the sport not evolving or attacking course designers. I was a little confused by it, honestly. What's your take on all that? I know Harry's feeling like that the sport needs to evolve a little and it's presented in a way that can be a little bit dangerous when it comes to those combinations that have been so discussed heavily recently. What's your quick take on that? Do you feel the same way he does? Do you think it's not that big of a deal? Do you think that it's just a little bit hyper focused for him because obviously he was injured and had a really scary fall because of it? Or what's your quick take on that?
I haven't paid much attention about the whole situation past the fact that I was there and I jumped the class when he had the accident, and I don't know what people are saying. My take is simple. I think that we have an incredible sport that obviously has a lot of risk. If we can mitigate those risks, then we should. I do think that there are certain combinations that it's probably better not to have them. It's just you have more bad that can happen than good. So if that's the case, then you probably shouldn't have them all together. Some of those combinations in certain situations that can confuse the horse, and it could end up in an accident.
Do you think that that's the combination, that vertical oxer combination in a two strides? Do you think that that's set up for accident more times than not?
Yeah,
The way that's set up, do you think that should go away?
I mean, I think that the way that it was set up that day, it was prone to have an accident. When I walked it, I thought to myself, if the horse misjudges this thing, you're gonna go down. Like the horse is coming from a long gallop, it's in the middle of the ring. There's nothing before and nothing after, and the horse might get confused and take off. After all, we train them to take off, right? We want them to take
Sure.
off, and this combination like that could be dangerous. I've always said that I don't like the combination where you have 1 to 2 in oxer vertical, for example. I've seen horses take off in 1-on-1 and end up in tragedy. Again, I'm not saying that is the fault of the course designer. The building is not incorrect. It's just that you have higher chances of a horse to make the wrong
Mhm.
decision. That's all it is. The course
So
designer.
right now it's on the course designer to use their judgment and placement to make
Yeah.
sure they're mitigating that risk while
Yeah,
still provide making a challenge. When
yeah,
I think back to like Hampton Classic years ago and Kevin and that amazing horse Sharpur, that I don't remember the track specifically, but I'm pretty sure it was a two strides vertical
yeah. I was there. Oxer
oxer
vertical one to
combination.
two. Oxer vertical.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So same thing as what you're describing.
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
and the horse made a bad judgment and took off one before. So again, it's not the horse designer's fault. And also, when Harry fell, it was not his fault. I just think that it's important for the course designers to recognize that when they decide to build those combinations like that, they have to be extra careful to make sure that there's nothing, no other factors that could um increase the chances of the horse to make the wrong decision. Because the problem is
Maybe
that
a waiting line coming into a combination like that, so you're already collected and
exactly,
everything. But then
exactly.
maybe what Harry's saying is probably fair, and maybe he needs to maybe
It is.
FEI
Again,
needs to
I
looking
haven't been
into
involved.
making.
I
Yeah,
haven't
but I
been
think
into
what he's saying
offense.
is making that FEI make a rule that that can't happen. So that way it's not just up to somebody's judgment
That, and that's the
on.
thing also, I would make it into a rule just because I think you have, in many cases, course designers that are not top like the ones in our shows and the shows you run. The course designers are top of the line. But in many other shows around the world, the course designers obviously don't have that experience,
Mhm.
and could make a mistake and someone can get hurt. So I think that it probably just makes more sense to just altogether just prohibit the combination, and that's the end of it. Sure, a course designer that knows how to use it could use it, and it would be a cool tool and make a good class. But you have to make rules for everyone, not just for the high level designers and the high level writers. The rules have to be for everyone.
Sure.
So I think it's all together. It would be just better that some combinations are totally avoided, and then you don't have to deal with the unnecessary accidents that could randomly happen. But I mean, if you can save one person from getting badly hurt, it already made sense, right?
Yeah, I think the point is too that the sport probably, wouldn't be affected in any way if that was eliminated, that type of combination or something
Yeah,
like that. I mean, I
yeah.
think so. Couple other quick ones. You've had a lot of great horses in your career. Probably people would be interested to hear which was your best horse you've had so far in your life. Is it Sancha? Is it Ladriano? Which one do you have the most connection to and the best feeling from?
Nah, I would never answer that question. That's I've had the ones you mentioned, and then add to that Gema. Obviously, I think that I've been blessed to have been able to create some connections with horses that just mean so much to me. Like this.
So you're not the one to always just say this is a horse of a lifetime.
No, no, I don't think so. Not for me,
A lot
at
of riders
least.
like to do that.
Yeah, no, no, not for me. I think that I've been lucky to have multiple horses of a lifetime for the very different, unique reasons, and then lucky I have another one now that you'll be able to see in your show in Kentucky. She'll be coming to Kentucky for the Invitational this year. Her name is Corby, that has
When you did in LA, right?
Exactly. You saw her in LA already. She has
Yep.
extraordinary qualities. But Ladriano, Sancha, Gema, have incredible connection. Horses I love. They're retired with me at home. Sancha lives in my farm in New York. Ladriano is retired now. He's in Florida with me and will retire in New York also at home. So I get to see them, and they will pass their days with my family. And
Ladriano, I remember. I can't. It was probably 2016.
yeah, he won in
I
your place with
I
Milan.
remember at my place, my old farm where we
Yeah.
started our events. I remember one event where he won the qualifier in the
And
Grand
the
Prix, and
Grand
everybody's
Prix.
like, "What, Alon? Like, what's Alon doing here? This incredible 8-year-old or
Yeah.
whatever at the time." And then you're
Yeah,
like,
he
"I need to
actually, I
ride
think,
that one."
he also actually at some point, I think, lived in your property in one of those years that Ilan was
Maybe.
staying there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Cool. Obviously, I'm an event organizer, so I have to ask you this question. What's the best event in the world that you've been to that you love the most? That if you what, and I know you're gonna have the general, you can say one of the normal ones that everybody says, whether it be Aachen or Geneva or these type of events, but it doesn't matter. What's the best and why?
Again, I have to tell you, I wouldn't be able to pick just one, because that would be just totally unfair. That just totally unfair. I mean, people speak obviously
Unfair to
of
who?
Akin,
You
unfair
want to
to
insult somebody?
no, unfair to the sport. Because you have some great events. Like you talk about Akin, obviously it's fantastic. Geneva is fantastic. The Masters is fantastic. Rome, Dublin, La Ball, are just great events, all of them in Europe. And then you come to America and you've had, Kentucky is like the Invitational is just such an event, that week with the eventing happening and the crowd and just so many horsemen and horse fans around. Then you have an event like the Saturday nights in Wellington that drive so many people, and it's just high level sport. So it just wouldn't be fair, to pick one. I think we're so lucky that we have a group of events in the world that are just that good, that bring so much. And I think that people obviously love to talk about the most traditional ones, and because we've also grown up listening to that, Aachen and Geneva and these shows, and everyone talks about it generation after generation. But the fact is that those are incredible, but there are also some incredible events around the world, and here in North America, that are awesome. They're maybe not Aachen, or they're not Geneva, or or Dublin, because they're not they don't have the same amount of prize money, and the demographics don't fit them in order to have all of the riders that maybe will go to one or the other, but already they're also fantastic events. So, I'd say, like, just with the question of the horses, I like to think that I go to these shows that I just told you, and really just bring my A game, and love and enjoy the atmosphere.
Not really one I wanted to hear, but okay, I'll take it. For me, I just
Which
want to hear, like
which one's yours?
I just what's that?
Which one's yours?
Well, see, I never competed at all of them. You know what I mean? So I think it's a harder question for me to answer than it is like you. My career, my riding career stopped pretty short, right? So,
About you
um,
organize events. So which one is your favorite event from all? You've been to all of them. Which one would you
well,
say?
see, I can't do that.
You see. So then I have to,
No, I'm just kidding. I'm
but I'm
just kidding.
the one that have to say it also. I can't do that either. So yeah,
Yeah,
I have to ask another writer and see what they tell. But I could tell you
yeah.
something. I could give you an answer. I would like to win Aachen.
Okay, so there you go.
I pick one. That
Because of like
the
the core prestige and tradition behind winning that Grand Prix.
not because necessarily is my number one favorite,
Okay,
but I can,
I'll take that as an answer.
you know,
That makes you feel like that's the most important Grand Prix globally to win.
exactly.
Like out of a career, like that's the one you
Sorry.
want to win. Fair enough. So
Yeah,
cool. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Honestly, I'm going to take Daniel's recommendation before we started filming here today was that I needed to do an episode on vet checks for the podcast. I'm going to make that one come up quicker than I expected, but it's on my list. I think that's definitely a crazy hot topic, huh?
yeah,
Um, but Daniel, I appreciate it so much for you joining me here today. Obviously, we've been close for a very, very long time since, like you said, you came to the States in 2020. It's hard to believe that we're getting a little bit older here in the sport, and we're not necessarily considered the young ones anymore in the industry. But anyway, it's great to have grown with you in this sport. Each of us finding our own paths, and I appreciate you joining us today.
absolutely, Derek. Anytime.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning into another episode of Horse Show 360 here, joined with Daniel Bluman, top international show jumper and based here in the States. You can follow us on all your podcast platforms on iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you tune into all your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Horse Show 360 Podcast, to watch full episodes. And we hope you keep tuning in. Thanks so much.